Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is the 15th of July. I hope that you are all well. And here in the UK, of course, we're looking forward to Freedom Day of some kind. Freedom of some kind after the 19th of July. I hope you guys have wonderful plans for the rest of your summers. But we are here to talk about all things ancient, and get away from the real world, or at least the current world, for a little bit. And start to think about all the fabulous things that happened in the Mediterranean and elsewhere around the world in antiquity thousands of years ago. So you have been sending in your great questions, as always. Thank you so much. This Q&A wouldn't be anything without your questions that we get a chance to respond to and have a look at. Now, Lynn Tildesley is hoping... Oh, I'm jealous. I was so jealous, Lynn, reading this question. Lynn is off to visit Halkidiki area in Greece for 3 weeks in September, COVID permitting. All fingers and toes crossed for you, Lynn, that you get there. What are the must-see sites in the area of Halkidiki? Hello, everyone. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in. Hello, Alexis. Hello, Nasim. Hello, John. Hello, Lorraine. How are you doing? Thank you so much indeed all for coming and joining in the Q&A. So we are all getting rather jealous of Lynn Tildesley, who's off to Halkidiki, hopefully in September. What should you go and see? So everyone, make your suggestions for the Halkidiki area of Greece. So of course, that's the northern pinnacle of Greece, the area around Thessaloniki. And then just below Thessaloniki, and there are a weird sort of three fingers of land that poke out just below Thessaloniki in northern Greece, and that is the area of Halkidiki. Now, hello Elizabeth, hello Amsis, hello Lee, good afternoon everyone, thank you. Hello Charlotte, thank you so much indeed for tuning in. Now, Halkidiki, I suspect Lynn, when you're there, and particularly given the year we've all had, a lot of the time is going to be spent on the beach, and there are beautiful beaches in Halkidiki to be had, with the beach cafes, the Greek coffees. You lucky thing indeed. But if you do manage to drag yourself away from the beach, and you want to go and see some archaeological sites, which of course you should, and we're all in agreement of that. Lee is asking, is Amphipolis visitable yet? Great question, Lee. I think it is, if I'm right in thinking, but Amphipolis would be top one to look out for. In the actual area of Halkidiki itself, another great place is Olinthos. Amazing mosaic floors to see in Olinthos. Hello, Tracy. Great to know it's scorching in Wales. Fabulous news. So Olinthos with the mosaic floors, absolutely. You might want to take a little saunter to the birthplace of Aristotle at Stagira as well. Alexis, if you can get to Thasos, go. Yes, indeed. You'd need to take a boat trip to the island of Thasos off the coast, not too far from Halkidiki, but if you could get to Thasos, absolutely amazing site. So we've got Thasos, we've got Stagira, we've got Olinthos, all kind of those two within the Halkidiki area. Then Thessaloniki itself, of course, you're probably flying in there before then going down to Halkidiki. Take some time in Thessaloniki itself to explore the city, and particularly the archaeological museum. Absolutely amazing. The Via Egnatia, the Roman road that ran across the top of Greece on its way over towards Istanbul, then Constantinople. And before that, the Greek colony of Byzantium. That would be a great one to go and walk along. You can actually walk sections of the Via Egnatia. And if you can get further over to the west, then obviously that takes you into the province of Macedon, and you want to get to Vergina, the tomb of Philip of Macedon, father of Alexander the Great, to Pella, the site of the Great Macedonian Palace. Absolutely brilliant, worthwhile going to see. Eleanor's asking about classic sites in the UK for kids about to start classics or Classic Civ GCSE. So if you can't get out to Halkidiki to Greece, if you're not as lucky as Lynn to be able to travel, what can you do in the UK? Eleanor, tons of stuff. Obviously, if it's in the UK, it's probably going to be more Roman Britain focused, but there are some amazing things. I don't think, if you're in any reach of London, the Museum of London, absolutely worth going to see first off because of the amazing collections. And while you're there, you can get a good bit of touring of the old Roman walls of Londinium, including in my favourite archaeological site, the underground NCP car park in City of London, where if you go to two of the particular bays, you can go and see a section of the Roman city wall occupying two parking bays still to this day in the underground NCP car park. Chester, brilliant. Bath, obviously, other kind of great sites around the UK. Caerleon in Wales, one of my personal favourites, including the museum, an absolute must-see. York, the Jorvik Viking Centre, obviously, but apparently they are constructing, I don't think it's open yet, a new kind of Roman York Centre as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that when that comes online. Lots of different suggestions. Do send them in for those who are kind of looking around wanting ancient sites in Britain to take students to. Lee, why are ancient walls found in car parks? Is that the right way around? Or is it why car parks placed over ancient walls? There we go. Somewhere in between the two of those. Yeah, the kind of NCP car park walls are kind of, I'd never forget seeing those for the first time. And we came to do an ITV programme about Roman Britain, and we were introduced to the car park walls sitting in bays. And it's the fact that they've still numbered the bays. There's something really good about that. The NCP car parking people didn't feel they could leave a gap or miss out the numbers. No, the bays are numbered. They're just permanently occupied by Roman city walls. And it's a particularly nice example of Roman city wall it is too, because it gets built up with uneven stoning, and then they put a red level of terracotta tiling in to level everything up again and get that absolutely straight, perfect line to then be able to build up again on top of that. Those Romans liked perfection from time to time. A new job as a travel consultant. Well, frankly, I think we'd all just like to be able to travel, wouldn't we? Kind of get out and about. That would be nice indeed. But Lynn, enjoy your visit to Halkidiki. I think it's going to be absolutely marvellous, and I'm not at all jealous. Neither are the rest of us. Right, onwards with our questions. Tracy Rabaiotti was asking, and this was a week or two ago, I have made a priority this week. I'm getting through some of the questions that you guys have all been extremely patient about getting answers to from previous weeks that I have not got to. So we are going to wind back the clock. So if you've asked questions in weeks gone past and you've thought, Michael, what is he doing? Not answering my question. Perhaps today is the day. Linda's mentioned the other great part of the Roman wall in the car park in Colchester. Absolutely. Perhaps car park designers are attracted to ancient walls. Maybe that. Of course, some of you may remember the ancient walls of the city of Athens that we looked at and scanned in the underground car park of the modern city of Athens when we were doing ancient invisible cities as well. So Tracy Rabaiotti has been asking, do you think, this was going back to the conversation we had around what happened in Athens in the last part of the 5th century BCE, early part of the 4th century BCE, when Athens had a bit of a wobble in its democracy. Yes, after the end of the Peloponnesian War, which Athens lost to Sparta, Sparta sort of insisted or asked, not very nicely, for Athens to vote out of existence its democracy and put in place a oligarchic rule, so the rule of a few, oligos, few, Greek, what became known as the 30 Tyrants. 30 Tyrants were then chucked out in a democratic revolution a year later, and yay! After lots of serious fighting across Athens, democracy came back and then lasted through the 4th century BCE. Tracy's question, she's asking about the integral role of the Spartan kings. Now, Sparta had 2 kings, and they also had, at this stage, a series of quite famous generals from the Peloponnesian War. And there was a bit of a rivalry going on between one of these generals and one of these Spartan kings. And the Spartan general wanted to keep democracy out of Athens, wanted to keep the oligarchy, and sent Spartan forces in to actually fight with the Athenian oligarchs against the Athenian democrats. The Spartan king, Pausanias, on the other hand, turned around and went, no, we're not going to do this anymore. I'm actually going to help broker a peace between these two sides and a resolution going forward. And Tracy's question is about Pausanias. Do you think Pausanias underestimated the consequences of reinstating democracy in Athens after the 30 Tyrants? And how did the subsequent rebuilding of Athens in the late 5th century contribute to Sparta's eventual decline? Excellent and detailed question, Tracy. We like this. Right. So, did he underestimate the consequences of reinstating democracy? I mean, to a certain extent, with the benefit of hindsight, yes, but perhaps not in the ways that we're anticipating. Don't forget, Sparta is a city-state that doesn't really like getting involved in affairs outside of its own borders. Sparta is inherently inward-focused. It doesn't feel itself in a natural place being at the leadership of anything pan-Greek. And it didn't really enjoy that at the time of the Persian invasions, handed over command of the enemies directly after the initial kind of repulsion of the Persians to Athens. And then at the end of the Peloponnesian War, when it had been leading the Peloponnesian League, wasn't really a massive fan of it and wasn't very good at it. There were individuals in Sparta who liked doing it, like certain Spartan generals, but not necessarily the Spartan system as a whole. It wasn't brilliantly designed or set up to allow it. So Spartan king is actually following kind of Spartan tradition, saying, look, we don't really want to be involved in this anymore. We're pulling out, negotiate a quick peace deal, and we're getting out of here, and we're leaving you guys to it. It's kind of proper Spartan traditional way of doing things. But Sparta will quite quickly in the 4th century get caught up in being involved more widely again when it's asked to police something called the King's Peace, which is actually the Persian king. The Persian king gets involved and starts kind of policing Greek affairs in the early 4th century. And they put Sparta in charge of kind of keeping the peace. And Sparta ends up as this kind of bully boy policeman wandering around. And it's that process that leads over the following sort of 20 odd years to Spartan decline from being a powerful state within the Greek world. So bringing peace to Athens didn't necessarily sow the seeds of Sparta's eventual downfall, but obviously it did allow Athens to start a process of climbing back up the ranks and becoming a city-state of continuing importance in the 4th century. It's really Sparta's own problems and ways of behaving that lead to kind of Sparta doing its thing, and as a result, causing its own problems for itself. Patricia, no, not growing a beard, just haven't shaved today for a couple of days. Sorry about that. I will do better next time and make sure that I am properly, bespokely groomed, there we go, to address you all. So thank you very much indeed, Tracy, for excellent question indeed. We've had a question also from Siobhan Brennan, who's talking about the Colosseum. Some of you remember we were talking about the fact that they're putting this new wooden slatted venting thing that you can open and close on the Colosseum floor in Rome so that people can see what's underneath the floor of the Colosseum. Amazing kind of integral works of prisons and storerooms and lifts that would bring everything up to the Colosseum floor, but also mean that when it's all closed off, you can actually be walking on the Colosseum floor, the central arena where all those gladiators competed, and many were sent to die and be mauled by wild animals. So you can walk on it, and they can even have events kind of on that space. Now, Siobhan's question is saying, would love to know your opinion on whether or not you believe this area, this underground area of the Colosseum, was flooded with water to allow for sea battles. And this is, a very famous story in the very early days of the Colosseum, when it was first opened, and it became kind of the epicenter of kind of 100 days plus of games and events and spectacles. Absolutely brilliant. Some of those spectacles were said to be sea battles. And yes, they claimed that they could flood the arena floor of the Colosseum to then have model ships sailing on the waters of the flood. And then even more amazingly, having filled it up, they could actually then drain it away really, really quickly to then be able to carry on with floor-based, dry, land-based, sand-based events. And the archaeology proves this. So there is the aqueducts that were bringing water into the Colosseum to enable it to have enough water to be able to fill the amphitheatre with. And then we also have found the drainage channels that allow for the draining of the Colosseum. And this is an extraordinary setup because so they are filling up the Colosseum, but able to maintain the underground storerooms in a way where all the stuff is without getting too soaked with the water, and then drain it all away again. So the drainage channels actually go sort of below into even further depths underneath the Colosseum than the underground area that is being exposed and part exposed by the new flooring, and that you can now take a tour of and go and see where the sort of prisons and dungeons and lifts were. So this was a phenomenal feat of engineering, absolutely extraordinary and incredible to be able to fill this with water, like the O show, the Cirque du Soleil show in Las Vegas, the kind of O show, and then drain it away again to have a land show afterwards. So Siobhan, thank you very much for that question. Absolutely brilliant. Have we got time to... No, we can get one more question in before we do a review of all the things that are happening around the world at the moment. Samantha Rani Brown, you were asking about the importance of the mortal women in the Iliad. interesting question. So now I wonder, Samantha, if you're listening and if you can tell us whether this was a question because you had some kind of essay perhaps to write about this, or some kind of assessment to write, the mortal women of the Iliad, or what's got you interested in the mortal women of the Iliad. If it was an assessment and I haven't got your question soon enough and the deadline's passed, I'm very, very, very sorry indeed. But your question is a really interesting one, because what is the importance of the mortal women in the Iliad? Now, these are people like, obviously, Helen, kind of the reason that the Greeks go to war with the Trojans, the face that launched 1,000 ships. And she sits really as a character, as a love-hate character, that's sort of, on one hand, the way she's portrayed in the Iliad, she is kind of forced. She's not necessarily in love with Paris or wanted to do a number of the things that she has, but she's forced in some ways by the power of the gods. But in some ways also, we really, really, really don't kind of like some of the decisions she made. And she sort of hates herself as much as anything, as we kind of dislike her. But at the same time, we're overawed by her. Then, of course, there's a complete other side of the equation. There's characters like Andromache, right? The noble female, the noble wife, the wife of Hector. Absolutely upstanding key member of the Trojan community that really makes us kind of not like the Greeks very much at all. Then there's Hecuba, kind of the wife Priam, and of course we'll see Hecuba be that kind of suffering victim, very much the kind of symbol of the brutality of war, and that gets continued outside of the Iliad and into great plays of Athenian tragedians like Euripides. So Euripides' Trojan Women, where Hecuba, as this grand queen, is now going to be sold into slavery, and kind of brilliantly sums up the sort of experience that she's having to go through. And then there's other people like Briseis, so they're kind of that act as status symbols in the great war and conflict between Agamemnon and Achilles. Kind of lovely to see. Well, thank you so much, Walter, for your comments, as well as things go through on the chat. Kind of loving some of your comments indeed. Alexis talking about, for women in the Iliad Trojan War, Natalie Haynes, absolutely 1,000 ships. This is some of the great stories of Greek myth have recently been told in many different ways, particularly bringing those female voices to the fore. That's absolutely kind of some of the great modern books to be able to read and get involved in. And of course, Natalie's bringing out some more. She's had Pandora's Jar as well, and there's more to come, obviously, on that one. So do look those up. But Samantha, thank you very much for your question, and I hope that is helpful and in time for you. Sarah Scotty, you've been asking about Greek and Roman pirates. How similar or different were they to the golden age of pirates? I love the idea of there was a golden age of pirates. Did they drink rum? No, probably not, but I'm sure they drank something pretty strong. Did they bury their treasure? Did they make maps? Did they sort of put X marking the spot? Probably not, in all sorts of ways, to all of those questions. But there definitely were pirates, and quite a lot of them around the ancient Mediterranean world, and not just the ancient Mediterranean world. We know, for instance, that in the 1st century CE, when the Roman fleet started running the monsoon winds across the Indian Ocean from the Red Sea all the way across to the ports on the western coast of India, that we were talking about in the talk I did to the Belfast Summer School last week about the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, one of my favourite texts. Look it up. Have a look at it. Absolutely brilliant. They were pirates in the Indian Ocean. Not that dissimilar to today, that were a real danger to the shipping, because they knew that this Roman fleet were carrying small but very high value luxury goods, and so were very, very worth grabbing if they could. Why were they called pirates, says Alexis? Because the I love it. Thank you very much indeed. Did you know there's International Talk Like a Pirate Day as well? One of my favourite days of the year, International Talk Like a Pirate Day. And I think this shows that some of our great national and international multinational corporations still have humour at their soul. That one bank chain, that shall remain nameless, for International Pirate Day, reprogrammed all their ATMs to talk at you in a pirate accent. Which I think is absolute genius. But it turns out that pirate accents, which have a sort of, quite a lot of similarity to kind of Cornish, don't they, kind of accents, that has come about because there's no historical root for that whatsoever. Pirates talk like they do, because one of the first films that conceptualized and was about pirates, the actor that was in it basically tried to put on an accent, and that's what it came out like, and it just stuck. So that's why pirates have evermore sounded like they do. There's no kind of historical background, sadly, to how they talk. But Greek and Roman pirates also very much a problem in the Mediterranean. And particularly southern Italy and Sicily. This was pirate central, and places like Zancle, one of the colonies kind of in the southern Italian coast, that's your kind of ancient Tortuga, kind of the home of pirates that they move out from. So, and in fact, we have a great story that Plato, when he went to Sicily to try and convince one of the rulers of Syracuse at the time to lead a better, more just philosophical life, etc. And you can imagine this boring philosopher turning up on the doorstep of this basic sort of playboy stroke military warlord, not really wanting to listen to him, finding him a bit dull. He actually sort of sold Plato into slavery to a bunch of pirates, but Plato managed to escape and then made his way finally back to Athens, and kind of then sort of stupidly came back a second time to try and convince him again. But that is totally another story. So Sarah, thank you very much indeed for your question on pirates. Absolutely brilliant. What have we got in store for us in terms of in the news and events going on? So I loved this from the Yorkshire Post. School brings history to life with mini museum housing treasures found in its archaeological dig. So this was excavations in 2016, delivers a unique take on what life was like under the rule of Roman Britain. 6 years after significant finds, this knowledge is being returned to the North Yorkshire primary school setting where it all began. Children at Norton Community Primary have created a miniature museum to house some of the artefacts which were uncovered when it expanded into premises on nearby Langton Road. Isn't that absolutely fantastic? Ancient past under the feet of learning. Most pirates were of Welsh origin. There you go. Kind of brilliant. Sarah has kind of set out the tone for the following, for all the conversation going forward. The Falkirk Herald television crew in Falkirk to film new show on Roman activity in the area. There you go. We can get involved on a Roman activity TV show. Television crew and expert archaeologists have rolled into Falkirk in search of further evidence of Roman activity in the area. There were various Roman forts and artefacts that have been discovered. Now, however, producers of The Great British Dig, History in Your Garden, believe more gems are waiting to be unearthed. So if you're in the area, get in there if you can. Kind of absolutely brilliant. Get in there. What's on around the ancient world? Well, in the modern world, about the ancient world. Well, of course, Lytham St Anne's Classical Association, very, very close to my heart because I'm the president, and the largest classical association branch across the UK, has just announced its programme for 21-22. Now, these are going to be in-person events. We're kicking off in September, in-person events, but kind of they're also planning to offer online access, as they've been doing all this past year with online events. So do get in touch with them. lsaclassics@gmail.com is the email address. Do get in touch to register your interest to be able to see these online if you're not going to be able to get to Lytham St Anne's in person, so they can keep you in touch. And what a lineup they have. So Professor Robin Osborne from Cambridge, who was my PhD supervisor, a long-time mentor and fantastic guy, is talking on the 16th of September about turning art into history. Then Douglas Jackson is talking about Hadrian's Wall in October. Charlotte Higgins is finally, having been delayed so many times because of COVID, coming up in November to talk about the importance of Greek myths in association with her new book. There's somebody called Michael Scott, going up in January to do the presidential lecture talking about Delos and the ancient world. And then in February, Nina Ramirez is coming to talk about Knossos. And then also Lucy Jackson in February, also coming to talk about the ancient Greek chorus. And Paul Roberts is going to be talking in April about the Last Supper in Pompeii. Absolutely fantastic lineup. You're going to love it. Do get involved. Colchester Castle in between this July and January 2022 is doing Decoding the Roman Dead. That looks absolutely fun. Get involved in that. And Classics for All, another group very close to my heart as I'm a trustee, is doing free online CPD for state school teachers from the 24th to the 27th of August. And that's all online as Zoom sessions. What is an in-person event, Lee? Yeah, it's a new term, isn't it? As in, we're actually going to be in a room. It's going to be there, a live audience, me talking in front of them, an in-person event. I'm going to be there in spirit and in person, as opposed to coming through the airwaves like we are now. So there we go. Yes, Sarah, it's what we used to have in the before times. Exactly, before the before. So Classics for All, don't forget the great CPD events, and the Latin programme also has an online summer school coming up in 2021 from July 26th to 30th, so happening very, very soon, and that's going to be on the theme of Natura, exploring the natural world, so do get in touch with them. And of course all the links here for all of these things that I've been looking at are on the Facebook page. And then, kind of, what's new? I'm quite interested in this. Archaeogaming, The Forgotten City, a game based in Roman archaeology. So The Forgotten City is set to be released in the next few months. And it's an intriguing look at the story showing a player will be a time traveller visiting the ancient world. They have worked with archaeologists and historians specialising in Roman history to create a realistic first century Roman city for the gaming world. And I know some of the consultants have been involved in this. Absolutely brilliant that we're seeing this gaming right at the forefront of using real scholarship and knowledge of antiquity to inform this gaming world. We've seen it with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, of course, and now we're seeing it here with The Forgotten City. And of course, so many young people are interacting and coming up against the ancient world through gaming now. And it's even become a topic of scholarly research in its own right, which I think is absolutely brilliant. We actually think about and discuss the conceptualization of the ancient world through the medium of video game. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, there's the usual great rounds of History Hit podcasts about the ancients. And in particular, can I single out this week, Simon Elliott talking about Julius Caesar's invasions of Britain. So get watching some of those. Do we have time for another question or two? Yes, we do. We've got a couple of minutes left before we have to finish up. So we talked about pirates. Where shall we go next? Julie Maskell says, is it possible to buy old relics, or are they all in museums? Do I have any? So, Julie, thank you for asking a really easy and not at all politically charged question. Is it possible to buy old relics, i.e. real pieces of antiquity? Yes, it is. It is possible to buy them legally through particular channels and from authorised sellers. There is, I would say, quite a range of legal sellers which are more or less concerned themselves about proving the provenance, i.e. the history of where that object has come from, and ensuring that the object has not at any point come from any kind of illegal excavation. And there's a whole series of global conventions that govern this material now, which kind of those who do work in this area should be adhering to. And there are equally those who are of the opinion that there should be no market at all in the buying and selling of antiquities. They should all be in museums or be in research institutes and being studied for their kind of value as objects, helping us understand the ancient world. And the feeling is that if there is any market whatsoever for these antiquities, there will always be thus an encouragement for people to illegally dig them up and try and sell them on the black market. Others would argue that if you don't have a legal channel for this to happen, then the only channel for it to happen is an illegal black market one, and you lose control entirely of these kind of something that is going to be happening anyway. So it's a very, very difficult issue in terms of balancing kind of where one should stand and how one should think about these things. But certainly there are relics out there kind of in private collections that have been bought and sold at auction and through auction houses. Do I have any? No, I don't. But I have been and kind of in contact with at different points in time different auction houses that work in a very good and legal and kind of strict way to adhere by all the conventions. So it's a real kind of difficult one to think about. And then, of course, alongside that, yes, Fiona's asking about if you find something yourself. Of course, then, particularly, there are different rules in each country about what happens if you find something yourself. And in the UK, of course, that's governed by a kind of whole series of laws relating to the discovery of treasure, where yes, absolutely, you have to declare it, and then it's given a kind of value by an official committee and a board, and then the government will normally step in to buy it from you for a certain amount of compensation, or it might be bought by a particular museum. So you have a sort of ownership of it, but there is also a kind of understanding and obligation to kind of pass that on to the right authorities, and certainly absolutely you have to declare it so that it's known about, and so that crucially we can understand that these things have been found. Atif is asking about metal detecting. Absolutely fascinating kind of group of people who kind of find that have this as their hobby and as their interest across the country. And again, kind of within the perspective of there are some rules and regulations, and there are codes of conduct governing these activities. And if people stick by those and declare their fines as a result, that's all good. The problem comes as ever if people don't follow the rules and regulations, and then we get into all sorts of trouble. And from that point of view, you can then start to think about, well, are people breaking the rules? That's one problem. As a scholar of the ancient world, I'm sad about the loss of knowledge that we might have about the ancient world from that particular fine, and I'm sad about the potential that people won't have to see that fine to be able to get interested and excited about the ancient world as well. So, Julie, thank you very much indeed for your question. A really, really good one. Have we got time for one quick one more? Donald Skinner-Reid was asking about a book, recommending a book about domestic life in the ancient world. Well, here Robert Garland, I think, is absolutely brilliant. Daily Life of the Ancient Greeks. Have a look at that. That's an absolute classic. And Carolyn Nicklin has been asking about temples at Paestum, wondered why the Greeks who settled there didn't go on to form an empire. Well, okay, so Paestum is an amazing site in southern Italy. It was founded as a Greek colony, absolutely, known then by the Greek term Poseidonia. Kind of the three temples that you see there today are all built in the period 550 to 450 BCE, so 6th century to mid-5th century. And it was a significant settlement. It was a successful settlement, but it actually gets taken over by another group, the Lucanians, southern Italy, group of Lucanians, before Rome extends its reach all over Italy. So the city is actually taken over at the end of the 5th century by the Lucanians, and it's a Greek Lucanian city for the next century or two, until Rome turns up in southern Italy in the late 3rd century BCE, taking over and making it the Roman town of Paestum. So they just didn't have a chance to go on to form their own empire. But Paestum starts as Greek, becomes Greek Lucanian, Greek Oscan as we call it, and then becomes Roman, and then goes on to have a very interesting life as a Roman city. But clearly they disband with a number of the buildings that were built in the Greek phase, like things like the council chamber. They don't need to discuss things when it's a Roman city. They just get on and do them. Brilliant all. Thank you so much indeed for your Q&A. We are out of time. It's so lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for your questions. Keep them coming in. Next time will be on the 5th of August at 5 o'clock. So kind of look forward to seeing you all on the 5th of August at 5 p.m. Do keep sending in your questions through the Facebook page or to our kind of through the email address, michaelscottacademic@gmail.com. And I look forward to seeing you on the 5th of August for a bit more ancient world. Until then, take care. See you all soon. Bye.